economics is all about. If you are rich or a large multinational corporation, if you can make huge campaign contributions, you are entitled to massive tax breaks, and Congress will give you those tax breaks. But if you are working class or poor, and you can't make those large campaign contributions, you are entitled to nothing. You're not entitled to health care through Medicaid. You're not entitled to a nutrition program to feed your kids. You're not entitled to a decent education. Trumpism is about the belief that we live in a dog-eat-dog world where the big dogs are able to eat the little dogs. And that is the way it is. This bill...
When my colleagues talk about how they defend the working class, I think the working class spoke pretty clearly on November 5th of 2024 and said, thank you, but no thank you. So what can happen in my old world of owning car dealerships? Mr. Chairman, you could walk into one of my dealerships, be a multi-millionaire, pick out a beautiful custom-made Rolls-Royce Spectre where the audio system upgrade is $21,000. The logoed headrest in the back seat are $1,500. The umbrella with a logo could be 10 grand. You can lease that car. And thanks to the amazing and remarkable policies from the Democrat Party, the federal government will give you a check for $7,500.
Oh no, and not this again. Bernie Sanders dusted off the same old socialist script, stepped up to the mic, and started wagging his finger like it's still 1974. The rich are evil, capitalism failed, tax them harder. We've heard it so many times you could mouth the words before he says them. But here's the problem for Bernie. This time, the room didn't just have politicians. It had Senator Moreno, a guy who actually built something, a guy who understands money beyond government spreadsheets and feelings. And the second Sanders started preaching, Moreno loaded up facts, logic, and just enough sarcasm to make it sting. What happens next is not a debate. It's a demolition. Hit like, subscribe, stay locked in. Let's watch the full clip before I break down exactly how Bernie Sanders got exposed.
It is apparently not good enough that the top 1% today own more wealth than the bottom 90%. That is rather phenomenal. But in my Republican colleagues' eyes, the wealthy and the powerful need even more help. 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%, just not good enough. We could do better than that. So not only should the very wealthy be asked to pay their fair share of taxes, the Republicans believe that we should give huge tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires.
I think we need to kind of go back in time for just a little bit, not quite as much as in Back to the Future. Let's just go back to 2020. There was an election in 2020. The Democrats gained control of the Senate and the White House. And what's been the result? During the 4 years of President Trump, his first term, it was never better for working class Americans. Real wage growth grew. The middle class was doing better. Our economy was doing fantastic. The Republicans had passed the TCJA, which gave tax relief to all Americans. And we received, and this is very important, the federal government received a record amount of revenue. So even though there was tax cuts for the wealthy was the headline. By the way, that line is as old as dirt, and it's totally false. While the tax rates were cut, tax revenue was at a record level. It would be fascinating if there was just one Democrat that acknowledged that we received a record amount of revenue in the federal coffers. Do you think to yourself, well, wait a second. Like, I'm a business guy. Like, if my revenue was at an all-time high and I was losing money, I'd say we have a huge expense problem. Like, oh my God, how could I get record revenue and yet have record deficits? Why? Because when you give Democrats control of our budget, what happens? I'll give you some examples. When my colleagues talk about how they defend the working class, I think the working class spoke pretty clearly on November 5th of 2024 and said, thank you, but no thank you. So what can happen in my old world of owning car dealerships? Mr. Chairman, you could walk into one of my dealerships, be a multimillionaire, pick out a beautiful custom-made Rolls-Royce Spectre where the audio system upgrade is $21,000. The logoed headrest in the back seat are $1,500. The umbrella with a logo could be 10 grand. You can lease that car. And thanks to the amazing and remarkable policies from the Democrat Party, the federal government will give you a check for $7,500. Think about that for just a second. That is a bill that became law called the Inflation Reduction Act, giving Rolls-Royce lease customers $7,500 lowers inflation, and every one of them voted for that bill. How did that bill become law, you ask? Did it get 60 votes? Rigorous debate? No. They did it through reconciliation. And Kamala Harris broke the tie-breaking vote so that multimillionaires could have their fifth vehicle parked in Palm Beach with a check for $7,500 thanks to the U.S. taxpayer.
All right, now let's talk about what just happened, because that was brutal and completely deserved. Bernie Sanders came in screaming about inequality like he always does, acting shocked that some people are richer than others in a free market economy. His solution, as always, more taxes, more government, more control. It's the same recycled socialism he's been selling for decades, and it fails every single time it's tried. But Bernie Moreno didn't argue theory, he argued reality. Moreno did something Democrats absolutely cannot stand. He took us back to results. Under Republican leadership, under President Trump, real wages went up. The middle class actually gained ground. People weren't drowning in inflation, and they weren't begging Washington for relief checks. And here's the part Bernie Sanders conveniently pretends doesn't exist. After Republican tax cuts, the federal government brought in record tax revenue. Record. So the idea that tax cuts starve the government is a lie, and Moreno said it without blinking. Then Moreno delivered the kind of analogy that makes socialists short-circuit. The Rolls-Royce example. This was devastating comedy wrapped in facts. Democrats scream about helping the working class, then pass a bill called the Inflation Reduction Act that literally hands $7,500 taxpayer checks to millionaires leasing luxury electric cars. Rolls-Royce, with five-figure umbrellas. And Bernie Sanders voted for it. Kamala Harris broke the tie for it. That's not fighting inequality. That's subsidizing the rich while pretending to be morally superior. Sanders didn't know where to look because the curtain got ripped open. The truth is Democrats don't hate rich people. They hate rich people who don't vote for them. Their policies don't punish elites. They protect them. And Moreno exposed that scam perfectly by speaking like someone who's actually run a business, not someone who's lived off government his entire life. This exchange wasn't just funny. It was revealing. One side lives in slogans. The other lives in reality. Bernie Sanders represents an ideology that talks endlessly about fairness while delivering inflation, deficits, and luxury handouts for the elite. Bernie Moreno represented something Democrats fear: common sense, lived experience, and results. That's why this moment hit so hard, and why the working class walked away from Democrats in the first place.